Here we are, Empire and Alliance is ready to start it. I read something in a comment online on BGG among the ratings for this game. Somebody seemed disappointed and made a sound as if this was a reduced version of Guns of August. For example, maybe Guns of August has naval rules or some other stuff. Someone else was noting that, like I have noted, it's such a waste that the backs of the counters have nothing on them, essentially, because they could be used for like level 1 entrenchments, or maybe the appropriate, maybe even a heavier entrenchment level, rather than all these extra counters, which, you know, it's like this is a step back in technique. Apparently the backs of the counters in Guns of August were used for something. I don't know if they were used for entrenchment or if they were used, given that there were games that already did that, like the Great War, it would make sense, or if they were used for a step reduction or something. All right. Well, let's get started. And what do? We look for the sequence of play, because I don't think we have a copy of it on the play aids. That's fine. Weather. Okay. I guess we don't have an automatic weather here. It is August, so it's clear everywhere. Fair enough. Central powers get to go. Reinforcements, there are none on the first turn. Everything's set up. Supply, everything is in supply. I know where I set things up, and they would be. And now we cannot entrench yet, so we do movement and combat. And on the west front, the big thing is going to probably be an attempt to push into Belgium. Let's look at our special rules here. On the east front, we probably don't want to push very hard. We don't have numerical superiority anywhere. But I am playing with the optional rules. So let's take a look at what the Schlieffen Plan forces us into. No German units may move in northeast, east, or southeast. No problem, I wouldn't be. Okay. It doesn't really force me into Schlieffen at all. It's not forcing a number of attacks. It's not creating an offensive which doesn't exist in the system. It's not really doing anything. I have to push against the forces there. I have a feeling I may need to move my lamps around playing this, because so much of the wasted part of the map is where usually I have the meat of the game. I probably should have turned it the other way, just to be more comfortable, but oh well, we'll get used to that. I do have another chair for bringing up there to make it a little easier. The biggie with Schlieffen is it's going to prevent me from shifting for an eastward assault at the beginning of the game. I already got myself in trouble. All units may move a maximum of 1 hex. This hex may be into a hex normally requiring more moves, or from one enemy zone of control to another, which costs an extra move as well. Units required to set up in specific cities may not move if they're more than 3 hexes from the nearest enemy controlled hex. I had enough movement points, I could have made it into this hex, but not on this first turn. There's not a lot of room for maneuver on this August 1st turn. You can see we're trying to reduce the Belgians as much as possible, trying to push forward where we can. We'll look at the odds, try to figure out what we can attack. The odds tables are going to be more complicated because I have so many options of ways to attack. Over on the east front, I've actually pulled back a little bit in all cases. I was illegally parked in some Polish territory. I was allowed to set up within 1 hex, yay, of this space. And I set up in here, no. So I fixed that. I hope I don't have any Russians that are parked in German territory or something. And then over in the Balkans, again, I'm not playing to force the Austrians to pull their army off the Serbs. So I'm willing to give ground to the Russians and try to destroy the Serbs. I just feel like if you've already set up your forces in a certain disposition, you shouldn't be trying to reallocate at this point in time. So I don't like that rule. It does represent something of, Conrad's like indecisiveness or whatever. But yeah, I wouldn't do it normally. That's going to put me on combat. I'm not honestly feeling comfortable doing the combat quite yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this here. I feel like I've spent a fair amount of effort trying to figure out the movement and dealing with the pooches in my map. I'm not really thrilled with them. I don't know quite what to do about that. Should have a fucking piece of plexi over it probably, but I don't have anything that size. All right, battery's almost dead. We're going to pause here and come up in a little bit. Okay, so the combat rolls in this have little weirdnesses in them. They have a fairly detailed set of different possibilities. I'm going to take my time and be slow on that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attack this to try to crack this. Now this is going to be the easiest combat I have. So I have 7 and 8 is 15. I'm going to go against this at 5-1 in the clear. Clear, I assume, doesn't do anything. Not always the case. Some games you get a bonus. 5-1, let's look for modifiers. We are not going across a river or anything there. We're all supplied. We don't get anything off that. So it's a straight 5-1. Roll the die. We get a 2, which is probably not very good. That's an HX. Unfortunately, we don't have a log. Instead, we have a picture here. It would be really useful to have put the different combat results there. I know graphics are a nice thing to have in a game, but they're nice to have. They're not useful. So we look for the combat results. We'll get used to this. This is a half exchange. I kind of know what it does. Defenders eliminated. The attacker has to remove units with attack factors equal to at least half the defense factors removed. So I got rid of a 3 here. I look at these. I have to lose at least 1.5. That's this unit. And we put them in our replacement pool. There doesn't seem to be something like out of supply units being gone permanently like there is in Great War. And why don't we just move forward? We're okay in terms of what the hell is it? Supplies and whatnot. I'm not really too worried about the Serbians running off and going up this way and capturing Sarajevo. I've got effects up here. Now, I think what I want to do is an attack of these 3 hexes against that unit. I'm going to spread the units out. I won't normally do this. I'll normally just do my counting, as one usually would. Wow. See, I put a book under this to raise this side. But I think that raised the other side a little too much. I may try to pull the carpeting out from under that table piece. This table doesn't seem to be evenly balanced. I think I've got all kind of different ways I can do this attack. This can be launched in on defense of one of these units. They're all the same, so I'm not worried too much about it. But basically we've got 3, 3, and 4 defense, or a 10 defense, or a 6 and a 4 defense, or a 7 and a 3 defense, but the defender has no capability of preventing me from attacking pairings. Now, for my attack, I have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 22, 27 to 10. That doesn't even get me to 3 to 1. If I look at this table, it's not very good at 2 to 1. We had enough trouble at 5 to 1, right? It's a kind of a bloody table, much like what I hear from Guns of August. So I probably want to try to arrange better attacks. I have a 9 here with these two. That can get a 3 to 1 against one of these. I can put an 8. So the 9 is the two bottom units. Although I would like to have smaller units in case I get an exchange or something like that. Of course, then big units can cause NDs, so maybe it's not that big a deal. So 7, 8, 9 gets me a 3 to 1. 9 gets me a 3 to 1. And then I have 3, 6, 8, a 2 to 1 against the other unit. Not really, because we're attacking across the river. Fuck, I forgot that. Yeah, this attack's going to be kind of unpleasant. So an attack across a river, the attacker is times 3/4 except for the artillery. Well, that's fucking horrible. I didn't realize it was a times 3/4. That's obnoxious calculation there, just in terms of what I'm doing. And these are all spread out of their hex. These guys, you know, I guess I could turn them around and have them spread the other way. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, what did I say? It was like 27? 7, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 22, 27 times 3/4. Oh, I don't know if I even have a calculator up here. So that's 60, 81. That's about 20 strength points. To 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You know, I'm going 2 to 1 across the board. Although more attacks can cause more damage. Let's go 2 to 1 across the board. This is also in a major city, which is -1 on the die roll. There is not a fort there. I get a 6, that's a 5, that's going to give me an exchange. The smaller force is eliminated, the larger has to lose factors equal to the smaller force. So, 3, 6, 9, 10 are dead here. Put these here. And I have to lose 10 attack factors off of all of this. I'll figure out so I think infantry, I don't know if the cost is the same. I was going to say I think infantry is better to have because of its higher defense factor than cav. And that would largely be the case, but if cav costs more to get, that would not be. So where's our replacement costs? It's just the strength. Not really. There were modifiers to that. Where the fuck is that listed? Replacements. Special cases. Some units have higher. Okay, cav is just as cheap as infantry. That's fine. So I'm going to take 3, 6, 10, I guess, and kill these. And already you're seeing how the combat is clunky and hard to calculate and kind of painful. But you at least have the opportunity to devote all your attacks on one hex. You don't have to worry about adjacent units and whatnot. But you do, I guess, have to worry about the other units in the stack. And now I get to advance after combat, which seems like a good idea. I think I'll pull everybody into Belgrade from here. Leave these here at the railhead. I have not moved the railhead because it wasn't my movement phase yet. And we'll pull the artillery in too and really defend the shit out of this. That makes this hard to get out of. Although, remember, lines of zones of control don't stop you from moving. They stop you from supply. So I can fall back safely. And you might have weird situations where you can cut off somebody's supply in weird ways because you can just ooze through. Of course, things can only move one hex this turn, so that's not a big deal. Over on the east front, I'm not set up to attack anything except maybe right there. I'll take a peek at that. 14 to 12 there. That would be a 1-to-1 if I did it all together. 1-to-1 doesn't look, I mean, it's not bad, right? AX, really wish these were here. There's so many different combat results. It's fucking annoying to have to page through here. Attacker eliminates equal to the number of defender factors. The surviving attacking units do not retreat. That's just a bad result for me. So that's the first two. AD is demoralized, so the first four are bad. ND's not particularly good for me. Exchanges, okay, they're all right. Half exchange is decent, and DD is decent, but it doesn't look like good odds if I attacked all at once. What if I did something else, though? Both of the Russian units have a 6 defense, so I could do 12 to 6, getting me on the 2-to-1, and then 2 to 6, getting me on the 1-to-3. I don't think it's worth it, but I'm just pointing out the weirdnesses of what I can do in terms of attacks and all these different varieties, and I have to make some kind of decision amongst them all. And I'm not really sure what all this flexibility is doing for me. I really don't know. It's weird. Like, it just seems like an overcomplication to have all these flexible attacks. Now we go over to the mess of the West Front. And this is really painful because not only do I have a lot of different, a single hex attack has many, many different choices, but I also don't have, I also have to make decisions between, hey, do I want to attack, like here I had the same situation. Did I want to attack with 3 stacks against 1, or did I want to spread it out a little bit? But it's a little more interesting over here in terms of finding my stacks. Now I definitely want to make this attack, which will be these 3 units, but maybe this one. And then if I am choosing, I have to consider everything. So if I'm choosing not to throw this in, well, then I had better make an attack on this with these 3 stacks. That doesn't seem like a bad combination. 3 on 1 seems pretty good. So I will probably do those 2 attacks. Probably not much else, though. Now, one thing, I saw hints of major offensives in, again, I read through some more of the notes for Guns of August, and they were talking about something like a big push, which sounds like an offensive. This game doesn't have that. So I don't believe Guns of August had any naval rules in the original, but there were expansion stuff that may have added navies to it. I don't know how much that really adds to the game. It adds to the randomness in a game because you know what? If the Central Powers are ever able to get some sort of naval dominance, it gives them a huge advantage that they never historically really had within reach. La Grande Guerre certainly allows for that. In fact, I believe the German fleet has an advantage on taking on the British fleet. However, there are some limitations that prevent you from sailing out. The really crazy game on this is the Great War, which allows you to use the German Navy to basically destroy England and just wreck their entire economy. It's possible, though, that, like, if I recall it correctly, it's possible to wreck the German economy doing that instead. Like, you can't, so it would feel like Britain can just give up, Britain can't give up their Navy. They can't afford to give it up because you would be able to attack into Britain. But I believe there are results that don't involve the fleets just dying as an option, that you have to spend for them. So it becomes a really weird situation where you have the capability to, like, lose the game at sea just because, well, in the case of the Germans, instead of losing your entire navy, you're forced to spend for it. And that means that you can't build the replacement units that you need. And you know what? Britain doesn't take up a huge amount of the capability that the Western forces do. You will probably drain their money a significant amount by taking a naval action of that sort. But again, games that add the navies, Balance of Power also adds navies. By the way, I never mentioned the two racier games I have, or, well, I guess you could do the SPW. But I never mentioned Paths of Glory. I haven't gotten to Fatal Alliances yet, so leave me alone. Or is it a Phalanx game? Yeah, the First World War there. That's another racier one. I really did not like Paths of Glory particularly. There's a lot of reasons for not liking it. It can be a kick as a game, but it doesn't cover a couple of things that I really like. And it also doesn't fit into the field with these others. I don't remember First World War too much. I don't think I hated it. It wasn't as bad as Paths of Glory. Which, I mean, to be fair, I don't hate Paths of Glory. It just doesn't do what I want for a World War I game. You have to memorize the fucking decks in order to get historical results. That's what I don't like about Paths of Glory. Like, if you do not know the decks, you will not play it properly. And you may not anyway, but that's okay if it's your choice not to. I don't remember First World War going one way or another in terms of really impressing me. I had hopes because it's Phalanx, and Phalanx has put out some really weird, interesting things like Age of Napoleon that, like, just like, whoa, that's a much better game than it looks. It looks like a tiny little thing. And I was kind of excited about it. But yeah. And I also haven't gotten to, there's another one here. That red thing there next to War in the Falklands. I wonder what that is. There's another one kicking around. Oh, there it is. Distant Foreign Fields, which I think is a Markham design, and I've kind of stayed away from it because I don't like the way he handles combat in most of the games. I wonder if Alma is already doing that. That's a much older Markham design. Okay. I really kind of don't want to face this, but I think I have to. I need to really worry about this combat system. So I look at these hexes, and I definitely want to make this attack. I think there's a fort under there. I don't know. But things are so crowded and messy. I want to be able to take the things out and fight them out somewhere else. I may end up moving them in little representations here. But right now, even though I said, hey, I think I have to do this, I think I need to break because my T is low and I can't face this without taking regular drinks of it. So I'm ready to do the West Front, but like dreading it, to be honest. Like, I'm looking at it and saying, okay, basically, I'm allocating these three hex attacks. I don't probably want to attack down here. I actually want to keep my attacks on the West Front relatively low. But In order to win, in order to keep in competition in this game and not meet the and not hit problems later on, I have to gain territory in France. I have to get victory points in France in order to meet the requirements that I have for sudden death type victory conditions and for end of game victory conditions if they come to that, because it's just going to be you have to make a certain level of success with the Central Powers. Now, conceivably, I can make it all in Russia, but that's going to be rough to do. I also find it very weird that you conquer all of Russia. That just, and have to garrison it all. Not sure I could do these calculations in this tight little area, so I pulled them out here to take a look. Now, this is a level 2 fort, which I also have to display. The original game had tracks that I think, from what I can tell, were used to represent the entrenchments. And you could take the counters off the map with them. I could see where that causes problems too in terms of calculating and coping with it. It feels like there's a real disregard of not as bad as there was in what I just played, which was Bloody April over there, but of the player's ability to try to play the game, to be honest, because this kind of calculation is really a pain. Anyway, these two are coming across the river, and anything I throw in from there would come across the river too. So they're going to be halved. I'm facing 9 strength points, but I've got a fort, which will subtract 2 off of it, but I've got a siege artillery piece, which is somewhere. Siege artillery adds +1 DRM to an attack containing a fort for each siege artillery that's present. I think I was only able to get 1 into play. No, I got 2 siege artillery. So I cancel out the fort with those 2 siege artillery. And that's a big deal. Okay, so I have 18, 25. Gotta remember that. You actually maintain fractions here. And what's this? 16, 17, 18, 19, and 18 is another 37 divided by 2 is 19. So I have 44 total strength points going in. The terrain is normal. 44 strength points going in against 6. Now, I could divide that up in multiple ways, but I think because of the fort, to get the DRMs against me, I got to do the whole thing. 6 goes into 42 7 times. I'm just going to do a 7 to 1 and keep all of this available for the attack here, which won't be across a river, so that'll be kind of cool. And that puts me on the best chart with no modifiers. It's a defender eliminated. All these French die. The fort can't be rebuilt. And then we get to advance, and we'll take the units and replace them on the map. But you can see this is, you know, this is an overly complicated, painful odds calculation situation. It isn't so bad in and of itself there, but if I take the options to split and do soak-offs and stuff like that and try to pick on individual units, it's going to get really, really ugly. Another battle, in order to decide that, yes, I want to throw all 3 of these hexes against this, and it's ugly, I had to check these hexes. This one is, I believe, a fort under there, but this one's not, so I might make an attack here or here, in which case, yeah, I'm free to throw everything in. This is a little ugly number-wise. I have 18, 21 times 3 is 63. Don't worry, the numbers aren't always going to be that easy. 63 to 24. Now that's not very good, because the best I can get is a 2 to 1 on the whole thing. I would like to make the attack, but I'm going to have to split this up into different attacks at different numbers, and I'm going to have to run different combos through my head to try to decide. So 21s can hit the 7 at 3 to 1, so I could do 2 3 to 1s, and then that would have a 10 to an 18 21. That would get me a 2 to 1. I think that's probably the best I can do. So I'm just going to go with that. But obviously there are so many other permutations I could make there. And what really kills me about this is I'm going through more effort to figure out the odds in this than the much more detailed and engaging combat system that's over in La Grande Guerre over there. Which, you know, is just sort of ridiculous, right? The story that the La Grande Guerre battle system tells me is so beautiful and so heavy, but it doesn't really require a lot of mental holding numbers in your head and everything. Yes, I have to write things down in it, so maybe it does. But it's like here I'm just going with kind of a, okay, I guess that's best. So let's do the first 3 to 1. And honestly, I don't know, where's my ugly attack going to be? My ugly attack's going to come from here, so that's going to be the 2 to 1. So let's do a 3 to 1 against one of these units. See what we get. Oh, where are we attacking? We're attacking here, so that's clear with no modifiers and no fort. So 3 to 1 at 7 gets me a DD. Okay, again, they decided a picture was worth more. You know, it's worth 1,000 words, right? Unfortunately, it's not worth 1,000 words in terms of telling me what the damage is, which is what I need to know. The defender is demoralized and retreats. Okay, so we pull one of these. No, that's a rail thing. Unfortunately, these things all look kind of alike to me. We pull one of these. This is the Allied colored demoralization. It's not a DTS because it's the player who's non-phasing, and then he has to retreat. I think it's just a 1-hex retreat. I'm coming out of here, so I fall back, and I guess I put this on top. I don't want, you know, multiple counters per stack, but I may have to, because if I have some entrenched units, some demoralized units, and some entrenched demoralized units, I've got some serious issues. But if I'm burying the demoralization under there, that's a problem too, and it's on a per unit basis. So there's a lot that I don't like going on here. Okay, now the next one was again a 3 to 1 against that unit with no modifiers. We get a big bad 1. That can't be good. That's an ND. Again, I don't know what that means. Right? I don't have that information here. No decision. The attacker eliminates his unit with the largest attack factor. The defender eliminates defense factors equal to that. Now, the only units that are involved are this for 6, and the 7 is okay because of that. So these 2 units get whacked. And now we go to the last one, which is a 2 to 1 coming down the center. And you can see, I mean, this is just ridiculous, right? I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through this game because the Western Front is always going to be this messy. just don't think I have the will. This is an attacker D. I don't know what that does. So I demoralize one corps or two divisions for each defending corps. There's only one corps defending. The first corps demoralized must be the largest. If the defender has more corps, then all attacking units are demoralized. All surviving attacking units are then retreated. So I get a DTS marker, because I'm going to recover from it this turn, I guess. I don't know. And that's the center stack. And it's only one unit that's hit, so I'll have to put it on the bottom, which has its problems because it's not going to be visible very, very well. And that's going to retreat from here. Now, if I overstack, I have to retreat again. So, fuck. Yeah, this is a really... So I have 3 units there. So where did my retreaters go? They went here. I can leave the artillery behind, but the rest of it falls back all the way from there. The French hold this location. These units are in the fort hex. These units are in this other hex. And I got to tell you, we just saw something that looks really unrealistic to me. Uh-oh, battery change again. What seems unrealistic to me is that all those troops got flung back. I could have distributed my forces differently so that I was taking one unit from each hex for each of the attacks, and then I'd be likely to have a defense somewhere. I'm not sure how terrible it is if the French want to try to ooze into there, but it does feel stupid, right? Like that the whole line just collapsed in the center from this attack and falls back all the way back to there because of that. Now, it's okay in a way because it's mobile combat. Something allowed us to prevent retreats. Forts can ignore a retreat on the AD or DD results, but I don't know if entrenchments can. Entrenchments, I don't see that they're allowed to. Doesn't look like it. Which means the combat's going to be a lot more fluid if you can get the masses in place than it really should be in sort of, you know, that 1915, 1916, even 1917 era periods of the game when the entrenchments are fairly hefty, but and like ground is really hard to take. It feels like it's going to be a little too easy. Right now, we're not that concerned with taking ground in the same sort of way. Like, things are going to be fluid enough. I don't want to put French units here where they'll just get slaughtered. Now, we're going to go looking to see, again, we didn't want to hit here. We used this up. We don't think that's good, but see if there's attacks here or up here that I want to make. Good chance that there's not. We're seeing fair amounts of attritional combat losses happening. Again, you can use kind of hand-wavy type arguments as to what's happening here. If the French move in there, it can be a successful counterattack or something like that. And if they don't, well, then the Germans didn't really retreat. But again, you're really kind of like not addressing what you're seeing on the board. What you're seeing on the board feels very different from what you have to make up to make any sense out of this. Okay. I will do any final combat down on that side and then finish up the turn, finish up the player turn but that's all I can take right now. This is far uglier than I thought it was going to be. I don't know if the original Guns of August was this painful a system, but I'm wondering if this thing, well, there's interesting questions, right? Let's take a look. There's always the question of, we got a publisher's dedication. I do not see we got a game design listed there. Not seeing anything in the rules that indicates the credits for the game. So let me look elsewhere. Now, I'm not seeing any credits at all. Maybe they're hidden on a plate or something, but other than just crediting the designer himself. And, there's plenty of fucking room that they could have put it. They just did not bother at all. And given Compass's reputation and their tendency, things I've heard from designers that have worked with them, they don't give a lot of developer support and maybe not a hell of a lot of playtester support. I would think somebody would put their foot down, unless this is the old Guns of August system straight up for how the combat's done, other than the D10, whatever. I mean, that's not going to make much difference to it. But this just feels like Baroque in terms of, not really, no, I mean, not even. It feels Stone Age. It just, the idea that you can do all these different permutations of forces, it boggles the mind that anybody would think that this is acceptable. Like, I don't know. So that's 2 games in a row on World War I where I'm like, Jesus, how did this get through any kind of playability type look? I don't know. For it's worth, BGG rates this higher than Guns of August, but I doubt that people who hated Guns of August would pick this up. And also, the rating on BGG, you're instructed, how likely are you to want to play this game? Which oh yeah, I just got it and I haven't played it yet. I'll give it a 9. I'd really love to play. Which is fucking ridiculous. Rule of thumb, just kind of estimations. I don't think there's any attacks I want to make towards the south comparatively. Which means we look in the sequence of play again, which again is not printed on a player aid. So much effort is put on the lots and lots of player aids worth of OOB setup information. Which honestly, if it weren't for the fact that you have to check each turn for the reinforcements, because just about every turn has reinforcements for the beginning of the war, seems like it's absolutely overblown. I don't know. It definitely seems weird to put those in play aids. Those could be paper. Give me a play aid with the information that I actually need. Give me an extra play aid or whatever, or put less pictures on the play aids you've got to give me the information that I actually need regularly. So like this, the war weariness, you very seldomly need that. The sequence of play would be a lot more useful than that, I think. I don't know. It's a fairly simple sequence of play. So we hit administrative phase, we get to advance the railheads. From what I understand, this is weird because advancing railhead happens in the administrative phase. I can extend it if I began the movement phase in the hex or entered the hex during the central power player segment. Well, I think that includes combat, so I think I can extend my railheads. Okay, let's take a look at those. So here, we push this forward with no problem. We didn't gain any ground in the east front. If anything, we gave up ground, but it hasn't been lost yet. And then over here, we can't go through Denmark, the Netherlands, but we can go forward here. And we didn't gain any other hexes. This one may be lost to us. I don't know what happens if the French take that. I don't think they can move the railhead. It's all the way down here. But they also don't break the railhead that's here, right? So it's kind of a weird situation where they're just interfering with railways that they're not able to claim. Check supply status of only unsupplied units. We didn't have any. Remove demoralizations. Okay, we had a couple of demoralization this turn, or we had one. I don't know. I know there's one over here. Right? So this turns into a regular demoralization. And maybe we just need one per hex. One per counter no matter what. We can't go to where we use one counter for multiple units in the hex. And then we're going to be in the Allied player segment, and yeah, I need another break. The combat for this is just way too heavyweight and way too intensive in terms of, having to calculate those different permutations, having to dig units out of there so I can spread them out to count all the factors and everything. It's just more than I want for a game like this. Some of it has to do with the fact that, there's all this map here. I'm used to standing back on this side of things. That's where my rules are and everything. And yeah, all the action's happening way over there. That's just a matter of personal taste, whatever, in terms of how the map is facing. But fuck, you really don't want to be down here. You want to be sitting over in that corner and then over in this corner, I guess. Here on the Allied side of the turn, I'm always confused when I don't go dancing. It's like, it's Sunday morning now, but is it Sunday? Is it Monday? I don't know. Later in the week, sometimes I get confused too, but usually the weekend I understand. We have to deal with Plan 17. First of all, we can't go north of this row, which means we're going to have trouble defending Belgium. Belgium also has restrictions, first turn restrictions that we have to look up. They have to end up in cities or something like that, which breaks up any chance of a defensive line. There's going to be a hole. Of course, maybe I can get my Brits in there. We'll see. And I have to attack at least 2 German-controlled hexes south of Metz on that August 1st turn. Now, there's nothing to really penalize me. In La Grande Guerre, at the very least, and I don't remember in Balance of Power, but in La Grande Guerre, you have all kinds of weird things going on. So the French artillery is particularly good in level ground at this point, but it can't handle inclination, so it doesn't work well in any kind of broken terrain. So it gets an advantage in level ground and a disadvantage in broken terrain. They're wearing red pants, so they take more casualties. But it also has to do with the Elan and whatever, that they were attacking much more severely. There's all kinds of stuff going on in that game to handle the specifics of this first period of the war. Started moving my Serbs. I'm gonna work my way around the board, get to the complex stuff first. But I do notice these Serbs are out of supply, so we need an out of supply marker somewhere. What's this? Weather stuff. And we just put a 1. I'm going to put it on the whole stack. Maybe it has to be on each unit. I don't know. But obviously we're going to pull out of there. Something a little bit problematic. I've got a unit that came out of the mountains into the woods here to give me more defense. I'm not really counting on the Austrians being able to turn my flank particularly effectively. And the more important thing is having enough defense in the unit. So this is what the Serbs are in. But yeah, I'm trying to distinguish between the unsupplied units and the supplied unit. And again, that means there's going to be counters buried, informational counters buried under other counters. It's just troubling. Central Powers having pulled back, the Russians are moving in. They don't get many attacks. I'm going to center one here, but we got a similar problem. The railheads are exposed in a way that, like, I'm going to have to, I have to tilt the counters to indicate things. Obviously, that's going to be more problematic over here where the units are very dense, but eventually I expect the East Front to become a solid line as well, if it's anything like most of the other games that I have on World War I. The big question with that is whether it's necessary in this game, but remember, they've got those like permeable zones of control, not the really locking ones, so I can slip in. Now to the nightmare. I had earlier, I did find the credits. They're sitting in front of me now. We do have a developer. What's worse is it's final developer, which kind of drives it as, hey, what's going on here? Final developer makes it sound like he's run through at least one other developer. That's always kind of a bad sign, but okay. At least there is a developer, and there's a set of playtesters. It's a little strange to see the game designer as one of the playtesters and the developer as a playtester. You just kind of assume that. Obviously, they're running their own groups, but these are people who are too close to the game, right? What you really want is not... So what you don't want is to have playtesters who are going through all the revisions. And I mean, it's okay to have a group that is going through all the revisions, but what you don't want is only playtesters who are going through all the revisions and getting used to the game as it changes, and thus used to the mechanisms and the difficulties, and start coming up with their ways around it without them being incorporated into the design. You want to make, and there's no clue here one way or the other about this, but you want to make sure that you're constantly adding playtest teams to hit the near final product, sort of the penultimate product on fresh playtesters. That's the blind testing concept. I can't say anything one way or another on this having to do with that, but yeah. Indeed find the Belgian special rule, which is the Belgian units must end their move in a Belgian city if possible. The Allied player may use sea movement to move British units from London to Le Havre, nowhere else, and then they have to end their turn there. So I'm not going to be able to rush into the front there. How much sea movement do I have? Britain, 3 corps. I think that's what I actually start with, or else I start with 2 corps in a division. I do the Brits, I do the Belgians, I get to the French, and this is going to be the real nightmare. Metz is here. I have to figure out my attacks and whatnot. That is that I'm obligated to make 2 attacks. In and of itself, that wouldn't be a big deal with most games, but in the case of this one, I've got to do all kind of calculation. Where can I get a good odds, whatever, and it's problematic. These 2 could hit this, and these 2 could hit that, and that's probably the best I can do in terms of getting multiple units hitting a single location. But maybe it would be better to hit this with these 2, but then I only can hit 1 there or 1 there. I don't know. And remember, I can only move 1 hex, which makes things a little easier in terms of calculations and whatnot, but yeah. The movement for the Western Front. Now I'm going to go, I don't think the Serbians are going to launch any attacks. and I may just undemoralize them. It's kind of easier in a game like this to work one front at a time and just kind of work your way through it to a significant degree. I haven't done that. I did movement, and then came back around, but I don't really feel like the supply phase is necessarily all that painful for me. Yeah, I'm just going to be doing the administrative phase then, which will allow me to recover from the unsupply, I think. I'm going to take a little bit of a break because I just ran out of tea. I'm going through the tea very quickly. This game is taking up a lot of tea and pipe and whatever. I'm not sure why. Does it mean I'm doing a lot and not on video much? Maybe. That's a good thing if it's the case. Attacker who has annoying number crunching to happen. Here, the Russians are considering attacking with all of these units into there. I don't remember what I had. 4, 8, 11, 13, 21, 29, 34 points. Now, if I attack it all at once, it's 13, 16, 17, 18. Wait, was I at 39? Seriously? 8, 11, 12, 13, 21, 29, no, 34, which is not quite enough to get to a 2-to-1. But if I want to attack that hex, and I kind of have set myself up to do so, I'm in an ugly position, but as the Austrians, I have to decide, do I want to throw the artillery in to defend the cav with its 3 defense and give it a 5, or do I want to kind of allow that to die and maybe throw the artillery in to defend the heavier infantry unit, bringing it to an 8 and making life harder on the Russians? And honestly, I guess the first decision is, do the Russians even want to attack? And I'm kind of thinking no. After I set up and moved into position, once I spread out the pieces, it just doesn't look like a good situation. So I think I'm going to hold off the attack, because Russia, if this is like any of the other games that I have, especially the ones that are more resource point related, where you take losses on resource points but eventually take losses on units, but the units might be semi-permanent or whatever, it's a really bad thing to lose pieces on the front that, so in general, the Russians are the weak spot, which means the Central Powers is smacking the Russians around, trying to drive them down, and holding off on conducting offensives in the West. Now, in this first year, it's important to gain some territory in the West while it's cheap and possible to do. But in the long run, I don't want to end up causing too many casualties on the Russians, because they have a hard time recuperating them in most games. So I'm going to use that knowledge and say, you know what? I'm not going to launch this attack. Likewise, I may not launch this attack either. Again, defeating, the whole Rennenkampf invasion of East Prussia. Although I have a numerical advantage in general, I'm not really able to bring it to bear anywhere yet, I think. But we shall see. Anyway, this particular thing, after calculating it out, I'm deciding the best I'm going to get is some 2-to-1 odds with 1-to-1s or something along those lines, so fuck it, it's not worth it. Guys, over here, yeah, here it's just horrible. Here, I can get to about a 1-to-1. It's just not worth it again, So, we're not making the attacks that the Russians historically made. We have no requirement to do so. And then that puts us over to the ugly choices, but I think we've already figured out what they're going to be. Attack I'm going to have to make here, I've actually got a 4-to-1 there. And no mods. But we get a crappy 1, which is an exchange. So we're going to have to lose 8 but we do get a possibility to advance, and that's interesting because these guys, while they're not cut off, it gives me some additional at-J, as I like to call it, on the German unit there if I advance forward with this stack. I mean, the less pleasant, by the way, I didn't just advance with this one because I got to protect against this possibility. He could slip in, who knows what could happen. So I advanced a unit from there as well. This unit's a little less, and I threw the artillery in from there as well. But now we've got these two trying to hit this, and I don't remember what I have. I counted it. I think it's 15, 18, 17, 35 points, hitting 16, 23, 27. Now, I want to commit this to this unit. 35 to 27 gets me a 1-to-1, but I might be able to squeeze out a 2-to-1 in there and get 1-to-1s on other units. So that's what I need to try to aim for. An 11 would mean 22 would be needed, which would leave me with only 13 to hit these. That's not good. This would take a 16, which I can get to 15. I can get to 17. 17 would leave me 18 left. So I could do a 1-to-1 on this, and I'm sorry, a 1-to-1 on 3 of the units, and a 2-to-1 on 1 unit, I think. I have to make absolutely certain. If I can get 17, that leaves me with 18. No, this ends up as 19 then. Fuck. Yeah, let me think. If I could get 16 precisely. I can get 16 precise. No, yes, I can. If I use a 5 from each of these and the artillery from each of these, I can get a 16 exactly. That means that I have 19, which will hit the 11, 19. So I get a 2-to-1 and a 1-to-1. This might not be good because of the distribution that I'm doing, but I want the better odds. So let's go with that 2-to-1 first. And again, no mods. And we get a shitty roll. That's an attacker D. I think that just flings him back with TDSs or whatever. We have to find the thing because there's no chart for it. Eventually we'll get used to these, but right now we're not. Attacker demoralizes for each defending corps. And yeah, we have to take the largest. We only demoralize one corps. Okay. I don't think it even takes the artillery with it. This is a forced idiot move, essentially, for the Plan 17. So what I had was the artillery. Remember, everything has to also retreat that was involved in that particular pulse of attack. And that was against one of these German 684s. So the two 574s both have a DTS. I used a marker for each one because I don't think I can do it otherwise. And one took an artillery back with it. The other sent the artillery this way. But now we have a 1-to-1 against the remainder of the stack. And again, without any mods. And we get a 5, which is an ND. ND. The attacker eliminates his largest attack factor. The defender eliminates defense factors equal to that. If 2 or more attacking units have the same attack factor, the attacker can choose which one to lose. I think I'm losing another one of those big French units, but a German unit's going to have to die in response to that, and no retreats after that, which is good because otherwise we might have broken our line if we got a really bad result like another D result there. And they are available. There are 2 of them in the AD in the 1-to-1. And there were 2 of them available in the 2-to-1. So it's a mellow chart. It's one that slowly changes. And that's easier to handle when you're using a 10-sided die. It's more likely to be able to get that kind of smoother combat chart. The French only lost a 5-point unit. the Germans didn't have anything particularly small except for the artillery, which was too small. So we took a 7-point defense unit out there. Now, we go back here to the admin. Railheads, I've been advancing them where I went. The French didn't gain a hex anywhere, so nothing's going to happen there. Supply status of unsupplied units, that's already been assessed and handled. Demoralization, the French units that just got the TDS drop 1 level. Any earlier ones, I have to kind of paw through it, are going to lose their demoralization at this point. It was an unsupplied over there, not a demoralization. Self-cheating, I think in this hex. It's okay. I could have moved this unit up and this unit back or whatever. I moved my demoralized unit forward, and you're not allowed to do that. They can't enter a zone of control. That should be the end of the first August turn. We'll go to the second one. I don't know if I have the willpower to do another one tonight, this morning, whatever you want to call it. But that gives you some idea of how things are going to go. I think I'm going to do both videos, both the August turns on one video. Just because. Made daylight on Sunday. Close to Christmas here. This is the second August turn in 1914, and we got some Allied troops coming in, but the Central Powers goes first, so we got a couple of Austrians coming in. Rail movement is now allowed, but limited, and these French units in Algiers are going to be able to sea move up to France. There may be some other releases. Basically, those are triggered on the order of battle. It's hard to keep track of everything. There's not a singular calendar that tells you when all the different factors come into play. The order of battle is good for one country or something, but there's other things like the turns that nationalities come in and everything, and I'm going to have to put some kind of reminder into play. Luckily, there's a bunch of these chits, so once I start putting them on the board, things will be easier. I'm pretty sure nobody else comes in August, but might be wrong with that. Might be wrong. So let's take a look at the August 1914. The Turks have a chance of coming in. I thought they might. All right, so let's check that. I need a 6 or more, but I have a -2. The Allies haven't taken anything yet. No French or Russian cities have fallen yet, and Bulgaria has not joined yet. So we need an 8 or better to bring the Turks in. We do not get that, and I think they're the only one I'm checking that early. 15 November, 16, and 15 for the US. Good enough. Oh, I don't believe there was anywhere, I gotta recheck. I don't believe anywhere was located for this turn. No, you can see we don't have a location for either of the 2 reinforcements I'm getting, which means we follow the requirement. One of these units has to go in Vienna, and then one has to be in a city that generates artillery replacements. So we walk back over and look for what that might be. That is Vienna and Budapest. And I'm only allowed to put 1 in each. Now, it really kind of doesn't matter. I'll put the bigger unit there. I think we want to get these additional units up onto the Russian front. We've already overcommitted to the Serbian front, but we'll make our decision there. In terms of supply, I scan around and it looks like everything's probably in supply. There is a bit of a question here, but the rail net gets down to here and people can walk to there. This is 1.5, 2. Remember, I'm playing with that option. I don't see any other big dangers. The danger over here is that the Russians could cut the Germans off up here. And there is, of course, some danger that the Russians could cut the Austrians off if they don't protect their line as well. So I've got to kind of pay some attention to stuff like that. But we're going to work our way around, again, starting in the Balkans. And try to arrange an attack. There's no hidden units or anything like that, so I can do calculations and all that ahead of time as to, what kind of odds I want to get. It only really gets ugly when you have that kind of density. But the West Front is always going to be that kind of density unless the game goes the way that Balance of Power and La Grande Guerre go, where you just never end up having the armies just slowly decrease in size, which historically is just not accurate. The troops that were under arms stayed relatively large throughout the war. Included the Austrian movement. I don't have great attacks there, but let's take a quick look. And I really can't get more into the fight. I may end up attacking this way and this way instead of all on there. I don't know. We'll look at the odds, but I'm not too worried about it. And by not good, I mean, I'm like, I don't know, at that 2-to-1 or so, which just doesn't feel very good. Sorry, just had to blow my things. Over here, over here, I've got the interest of rail movement. Now, one-ton train move, it's 20 hexes this turn, and one-to D train, that'll give me a movement point so that I could move adjacent to the enemy if need be. I have these individual rail movement pieces, which again, I don't feel like there's anything in the rules that really makes any sense for them except to count rail capacity, which I think is full here. Let's look. Again, it's special rules for turn 2. Rail capacities are reduced. Yeah, never mind. So 9 would go down to 6. That's the actual example we have here. Which means I can move 6 corps. Well, I have 2 that I really want to move for the Austrians, so no big deal there. And it seems kind of a silly way to count things when I could just put a rail capacity here and use it on the track instead, to whatever extent I want. I really don't feel like these are terribly useful. There seems to be this idea in this whole game of put counters on units all over the fucking place, for all kinds of stuff. And I don't think that's the case in the original game, because the original, for example, with trenches, had a bunch of boxes, and the trench marker would actually represent the unit in the offboard box, which just seems like such a cleaner solution than this kind of mess here. Now, it doesn't really help all that much when you got to count factors and whatnot. You're still going to have to set things up for all the permutations of different attacks you can make. Of course, with the solution that I talked about in terms of using these markers over on the track, is they're not designed for it. These are all CP rail used markers, as opposed to I used this nationality. So they actually kind of don't even work as counters, because, no, I just have to keep track of it in my head. It's not that big a deal. I wouldn't mind if there was nothing at all. But because, like, if I railed a German unit across Austrian tracks, I have to pay from both. I really need national flags, just like I have with the RP counters. I don't have those, but I really don't know what these are for. I'm trying, like, there's not something that happens to units that use rail movement that impacts them later in the turn that you have to track that. The only thing I can think of, because, you can't rail into a zone of control, but you can use normal movement after you get off the train and pay your detraining cost. So I really don't know what these are for. There's a ton of them, and it feels like a fucking waste. I don't know. The East Front, I've moved a couple of core, good quality ones to the East Front, covering these fortresses. The only other things I can move there are the ersatz core, which I guess are the ones that are labeled with an E on them. That is probably specified. There is a list of like what the letters mean and whatever, and I'm assuming that's what it is. Austrians preparing for an attack here, but also falling back here. I haven't decided what to do with the Viennese yet. Trieste has to stay there as garrison. I can turn that upside down to remind me. But I need to figure out what I need to do on the West Front in order to kind of stabilize things, because we had a bit of a breakthrough here. Complicated enough in the West Front that as I move units forward, I rotate them partially to indicate that I've moved them, because I'm doing a lot of counterfactor counting and stuff like that. This is so different from most of the games that I play on the World War I side of things. It's a very, very painful type of thing. It reminds me, it feels like a Europa type of thing to do, to just be stacking all these counters and trying to make sure I have the exact factors I've got that I need. Both balance of power and La Grande Guerre play in a very different sort of way, where yes, you don't have a lot of counters in balance of power. In La Grande Guerre you do, but they're associated into armies and you're not really able to switch them around all that easily. You can dispatch some. But also, it's not just a factor versus factor. It's how strong an attack am I making, and the combat system's much, much more complex. Consider it to be something kind of like an Empires and Arms type combat system, or Europa Universalis. And then the others that I have, the World War I, it's like one counter per hex, so you can very easily see what's going on. And in the Great War, you're looking at, it's an area movement game, and, it's pretty easy to see, hey, can I launch an attack here? What's it going to cost me? What's it going to be about? Other things like Paths of Glory, again, it's essentially an area game. It's point to point. And you've got it's also pulsed using a CDG, so you're not going to be able to attack everywhere. You're trying to use a card to generate an individual attack. I made a mistake with something I said earlier in the last video. I was talking about, or maybe it was in this one, Distant Foreign Lands. I got that mistaken, and I also got the game designer mistaken. That is actually a game I'm very interested in. I have no idea what it's like. The one that I was confusing it with was Death in the Trenches, which was suggested to me by one of our past, by somebody who died a few years back, which is not a Rob Markham game, and I'm realizing Rob Markham is not the guy I thought he was. He is the guy who did Alma. He's the guy who I think did the Soldier King series, which is kind of an interesting game. And it has a very light flavor to it, but no, it's Ben Madison, who has these games where you decide how hard you want to attack, and if you attack too hard, you do no damage at all to the enemy, which just feels weird. It's like I just don't buy, like, as a game mechanism, as a fun mechanism, it's kind of cool, but when you try to look at the historical, like, accuracy that it's applying, I don't even know where that game is. I know I own it, and I believe it's gonna be over here, but maybe. Yeah, I don't see it down there. I think it's in this pile somewhere, but I'm not sure where. But I have much, much less interest in that. But I do have a big interest in the Distant Foreign Lands. That I heard some interesting stuff about it. It's not well rated, but it's like, I feel like it's something kind of like Le Grand Guerre that maybe is trying to do a lot of interesting stuff and gets some of it kind of wrong. All right, I need to swap batteries, it turns out. I'm just busily looking over for the game that I'm looking for, and I will continue trying to maneuver things. I'm trying to break through in Belgium and get through in the north as hard as possible, but I'm gonna have to defend in the south, and I would like to gain some ground here where historically, you can see this line. This is where the, I guess where the 18 scenario is. So that's going to be the Hindenburg line. So I can get quite a bit further west, but if I can't get to something that's of value, it's not worth doing. It's not worth holding. Actually, on the west front, I may have to give up this hex. I believe I will have to. That's an unsupplied unit. It's something that once you focus in on a front, you begin to realize things. It's hard to capture, to do the sequence of play in order everywhere. And I got to tell you, when I play Le Grand Guerre, I do one front, then I do the other front. I do west and east, and I can kind of handle the Serbs in with the east front because they're close enough. They might interfere with each other, but yeah, I do them as almost separate game turns. And honestly, you could play the game with 4 people, 2 people playing, the Central Powers, not one person playing the Austrians, one person playing the Germans, but rather one person playing the West Front of the Central Powers, the Germans essentially, and one person playing the East Front. But the East Front's where everything interesting is happening for the Germans, really. They don't. My analysis of World War I is expend as little as possible with the Central Powers on the West Front and try to win the East Front as fast as possible and crush Russia. And that works in some games really, really well. A little weirder in Le Grand Guerre. It's less obvious, and you actually have to do an offensive on both fronts. Same with balance of power. So like, it's a little different what's required of you. On the West Front, we push to cover ourselves here, and we're pushing as far forward as we can, but we're hoping to make, I don't know where we can make our hits. I did not calculate out all the attacks. I'm basically just pushing as hard as I can everywhere, and then I'll see what the opportunity attacks are. The real question is whether I want to bust through. Really, it's this unit, whether I apply it to Brussels, well, these 2 units, or, because this can actually handle Antwerp on its own, or try to focus more here and then here. And it's really kind of how much of a breakthrough do you want? Breaking through in the north seems the most important to me, but the way the numbers work might not work. Anyway, we're going to go back over to the Balkans and figure out our attacks and do them, and we'll report on stuff as it happens. Serbian front, I had a half exchange attacking into this hex. I did not advance. I also took an infantry unit, which is better than the artillery unit, but artillery feels like it's more expensive, and it also has I can stack an extra artillery unit in an attack. Although I have plenty of frontage here, and then I drove these guys back, demoralized them. They were fighting with the defensive value of the woods, which gives them a -1. Interestingly, mountains have seal, okay. I was gonna say, it seems really odd that there's no modifier for the mountains. They got kind of a mixture of different kinds of effects. Having the attacker, I mean, I guess unless you're up here, having the attacker is a more extreme effect than a -1 is. And you don't want to rely too much on too many minuses, I think. I think they can have a fairly hefty effect. I don't know. Over here is going to be a kind of a brain burner. I'm going to have to attack in multiple parts. I have like 43 strength points against 17, which obviously isn't very good. I can get a 2-to-1, but I should be able to get 3-to-1s. So I'm going to force him to stack his units and all kind of crap and just try to eliminate it in detail instead of whatever it is. Whatever feels comfortable. It does allow you to take advantage. Like, one of the problems with just adding up the factors and coming to a simple odds is that the simple odds doesn't really reflect the strength differential as well. So here I have well better than 2-to-1, but not 3-to-1 across the board. So it does make sense that I want to piece things out, and it's kind of, in some ways it feels like a clever little way to handle not the normal odds, but still reflect what the normal odds tables do, and like show the in-between, right? Without having to do like a 2.5-to-1 or something like that, a 3-to-2 odds or whatever. But this is actually even more clever because it doesn't have a clear barrier, right? I'm able to juggle things around and do things really, really cleverly. But it also comes with an intense cost in terms of the mental gymnastics I have to do. Now, maybe you get used to it after a while, but it's really painful right now. It's just something I'm not used to doing. Figuring out all the different permutations and seeing which one's best. But I think for the most part, I'm going to look for how much can I take in a 3-to-1, and can I still get a 2-to-1 off of that? And just try to do it really simple without looking at all the permutations. I think for the most part you can cut them down to just a few choices. 49-to-17 though, here's the problem. The particular units that I use in the attack are of some importance. It's not just the strength point variation, because I would like to advance with this stack to get out of this little pocket here. Advance backwards like the Italians like to do. But so I want to make sure I get all these guys in my 3-to-1, stuff like that, Probably good enough to advance these guys, because getting around here is going to be pretty tough for the Russians. No, I had my numbers wrong. I thought I got to 49. I don't know how I got there, but it's actually 43. That's not as easy. 49 would be real nice. 43, I'm looking at 12. I want 36 for that to get 3-to-1. Well, that only leaves me 7, which is a 1-to-1 on these others. Attacks went poorly. The 1-to-1 ended up destroying, I got an AX, which means I lose the amount of defending factors that I was facing, which was like 5. So I lost a unit there, and then I got a regular exchange and ended up losing all of these. And then what you choose to lose might be important as well for a couple of these bigger Russian corps. but not a good result. It's a bloody game, is all I have to say. But worse, I'm in kind of an ugly position where the Russians might be able to encircle me and cause some serious problems to the Austrians. And the Austrians may be setting in for a deep setback. I don't think I have an attack here I want to make, but I'll double check, and then we'll get to the West Front and the horrors of that. After a nice success which got me Antwerp, I decided, I'm going to bypass Brussels instead of Antwerp, and launched a big attack from these 3 hexes against here, but it's only a 2-to-1. I did it as a consolidated attack, which makes it a high risk. I rolled a shitty old 1, which got me an AD. That means everything's going to have to retreat, and these guys are all going to get destroyed. Now, there's an optional rule that I'm playing with, which I think gets me some replacement points back, because these guys have a legitimate retreat, but, well, they have a partially legitimate retreat, but I have to look that up and make sure. But yeah, this is going to be ugly. My force is demoralized and flung back, and the French are going to be in much, much better shape. And this just throws the whole Schlieffen plan into complete stymie, and I feel kind of breaks that initial German attack completely. And, I threw what I could in. These guys would be halved, but I can get 3 against this. So I figure, let's go for that. But I didn't try to do anything clever because I wasn't going to get much better than 2-to-1s anyway. A bunch of 2-to-1 rolls versus one big risky roll. Well, I don't know. But the big risky roll is easier to do. Failed retreat, which was 3 corps, and I'll take all my demoralizations on those corps, because why not? The other units have to retreat too, but I'm looking at these, and man, they're a fucking mess. This is probably the worst place in this game. I complained a little bit about the white print for setup, but you only do that once in the game. You kind of scry through my glasses, but I got to tell you, being able to distinguish these different nationalities, some of them stand out really clear, but some of them not so much. For example, what the fuck is this? It's Montenegro, but I can barely read it. And then here's another one. It's the Dutch, barely readable. Their choice of fonts, Compass is just so bad at making things readable. I don't know why they do this. It's like, counters back in the 70s were readable. Every other game company, there's very few that have this problem. It's like they go out of their way to make counters unreadable. Now, the one sort of saving grace is I can flip this over and see there's a German marker on it. But you know what's not on it? The information that I need that's on the other side. I would love it if it had the flag and said infantry on it. That would, then I could have either one. Either the unreadable if for some reason I liked that, or something that was kind of readable. There's going to be a shit ton of markers on here too, but it's like, Jesus. I don't understand why Compass has... It's this Mark Mahaffey. He's graphics and layout throughout most of their stuff. He's like... If anybody looked at these counters, if they were ever given a scan of these and forced to play with them, they would immediately write back, these are unplayable. And they go out of their way in some cases. Here, they've done this weird puffy font that's just like unreadable. And then color choices and whatnot make it worse. Games like the God Kings, they put in this weird fucking font. There's a reprint of that out. I don't know if they fixed it. I doubt it. They don't tend to fix things. Very recently, not the same problem, but I played, what the fuck was it? The Nations in Arms or whatever, Valmy to Waterloo. And they made the setup, like the dates for some of the units, absolutely unreadable by putting really, really dark blue line on every counter with a date in black that's almost indistinguishable from it. And everybody hates it. And this is a second edition. You'd think that the hatred would have made them say, yeah, let's fucking redesign those counters. They didn't quite work. So I don't know. Complaints about the components, like all these fucking entrenchment markers and the rail markers and whatnot. There's just this sort of, wow, that's not the wisest way to do things. But to make the counters readable, I actually had thought, wow, because so far everything's been okay for play. Compass has actually done an okay job. It's not perfect. There's some iffy stuff. The demoralized counters look too similar. They don't jump out enough. I mean, it would be better if they were white with black on them, and even if they didn't show nationality, whatever. But yeah, they're all right. There's something that blurs a little with these, the unsupplied blur with the trenches. But they're used in different sort of ways, but they're actually all put on top of counters or below counters. I don't know. It doesn't really tell you how to set things up in terms of how to use all these fucking counters. But these fuckers, the RP counters, they're just shit. I mean, how did somebody look at these and say they're okay, even vaguely okay? I don't know. It's like somebody's getting a boner out of, let me use a different font. The rail thing, we have these C moves. We have a pile of them for the Brits, 2 for the Germans, 1 for the Russians. They're meant to be put on counters. Germany only can move 1 corps by C move. They have 2 counters. I guess they can move two divisions. The Brits can go up to 6 corps. They have about 6 counters. The Russians have 2 corps that they could move. They only have 1 counter. And they're meant to be used, maybe I'm mistaken, maybe the Russians, oh yeah, the Russians have 2, the Germans have 1. Okay, that's fair. They're meant to be used on top of counters, whereas that doesn't really mean anything. The only thing they are, like the rail ones, are tracks that you keep. At least they have the nationality on them so that I can use them on the track if I do want to record C moves. But again, C moves, like rail moves, there's no rule, and not even an optional rule or anything, that makes units that moved by some sort of transport different from other units outside of while you're actually moving them. So I don't know what the counters are for, but they're clearly like, but you know, that kind of thing is sort of a, wow, somebody just didn't consider what they needed for the game. That's not that's not a graphic design thing. That's a game design and development issue. That, like, yeah, you don't actually need this stuff. Maybe it's an artifact of an earlier design to the game that, like, you know, they were like, well, we made the counters already, so we're stuck with them. And now I'm still stuck in this battle, and I haven't even moved those pieces, but I went off on this so hard that, like, I got lost where I am. And like a previous battle that we had the German force just recoils back away. Again, you might convince me things like this would happen in this war of movement. I'm not really convinced by it, to tell you the truth. But like, I could avoid that by not attacking with all my units. And maybe that's the answer when you're in trench warfare or whatever, or to do, well, you're not going to get the automatic victories, so fuck that. You know, I mean, you might get it against a weak unit or something, but, and, because I think the most I've ever gotten in an attack is like, I know I've gotten 3-to-1s. Maybe I've gotten I had a 5-to-1 at one point, but it's 8-to-1, right? And I think I have run out of valid attacks. I was counting on trying to take this hex and pushing further. I might be able to push against something like this. See if we can get something over there. It does create a bumpier front that I don't really like the idea of, but I mean, I'm just reeling back. The whole German army has been sent in retreat. By a not terribly bad result. That's the whole thing. Like an AD doesn't feel all that horrible. I don't know, it's pretty bad, I guess. The only thing worse, well, AX is worse on the number chart. AX does not force you to retreat. AD does. And there's no option in this game to say, you know what, I'll take some enhanced losses to hold my position or anything like that. It's too simple a game for that. But this is just not a believable situation. Yeah. I mean, I just don't buy that the entire German army came surging forward and then is repulsed and runs away en masse in this time period. Pick on this. I have 42-7. That's a 6-1. That's a really good table. But I don't have any siege artillery. There is a level 2 fort there and a city, which would mean I'm at -3 on the die roll. I think it's still worth it. Let's go for it. And again, I mean, there's only one unit there, so there's no DD result there, or no AD result there. -3 gets us down to 0. That's a half exchange. I get fucked again, but not, you know, I don't lose ground. Unable to find any other attacks I want to make. I removed the demoralized marker that I had kicking around back there. I removed the unsupplied I had there. I feel like the Central Powers is just collapsing. This whole front falling back here is horrible. The situation that's happening here is horrible. And it does not feel like World War I. I mean, even in that early mobile stage, it just, there's nothing that matches. There are much, much simpler games that do, you know, I mean, this is just giving me results that, like, wow, that's fucking goofy. All right. We are getting into the British turn in August, in the second turn of August 1914. We shall see. Oh, I forgot to move these guys. Fuck. Let me get them up towards the front. I believe I'm allowed to be like 7 hexes from here. Let me cover this. That doesn't seem like a bad thing to do. Don't allow the Austrians to move into Germany. I don't think there's a prohibition here. Away and probably going to take a sleep. My neighbor has his smoker out again. It made me kind of wonder, is today later than I think? Because I could see him doing that for Christmas or something. But I don't know. I'm just such a snoop about this stuff. And I like to share my snoopiness. I don't know, maybe about a month ago, certainly a couple of weeks ago, I was doing gaming up here and there was weird noises coming from back in the pavilion. And the mystery, I think, is solved. I saw what they were working on back there. But I read in the newspaper, the sort of weekly rag that is put out for free here, that meeting at the pavilion where they did that today, and it's going on right now, they would have this sort of hiding products of crafts, little fairies and stuff like that that had been made throughout the woods in this general area. And it's for young children and their families and whatnot, but it's for young children to be able to hunt and find these things and collect them up, like little toys just before Christmas and whatnot. And I think that's what was being made that night. But they also have like crafts and whatnot at the pavilion. I didn't go up and see. I'm waiting until they go away because I'm expecting there'll probably be some food in the trash. Not that I'm particularly hungry or anything. Anyway, we're ready to start with the Allied forces coming in. And there is some collected over there. Sort of this, I wouldn't have said anything if I hadn't said it, I hadn't been really questioning the noises that night. And sometimes things connect and you find out the mysteries. And it's just so cool to actually catch the mysteries as opposed to what I usually do, which is not really ever find anything out. Look at what's going on in the east first. In the Balkans, the Serbs are pulling back again. Now, compare this to like La Grande Guerre, and this is the fastest you'll ever see Belgrade fall, or in almost any other game that I've seen. The Serbs are usually able to hold it a lot longer. And historically, they did kind of hold out. Now, granted, I've used excessive force with the Austrians, but there was just no way to stand up there. Over here, on the Russian side of things, we have encircled this fortress and are looking at a destruction potentially there. I don't know what the odds are exactly. I'm not going to be able to attack one of these, but the Russians are doing quite a bit there. I spent all of these. I'm using these as coinage, essentially. I pull out a number of these equal to the amount of rail that I have available. In this case, it was 6. And I shipped closer stuff forward, actually, for the most part. I did have 3 extra that railed up to about here, really a hex behind, and then had an extra hex of movement because they have 3 movement points, 1 to entrain, 1 to detrain, and 1 to move another hex. I actually could have gotten extra hex, I think, by moving a hex. Nah, I think it all works out the same. Yeah. If I had moved 2 hexes, entrained, and then moved the 20 hexes, I'd actually get an extra hex out of it somehow. Here we fell back on Warsaw and loads. I'm a little worried about the Austrians who are creeping up on us. But we're hoping for a destruction here, you know, really undermining the Central Powers in the east. And we shall see. And now on to the nightmare of the West Front, where we have more Brits, which will be seafaring in. And the French have gotten a couple of extra corps as well. The French have an opportunity to push forward a little bit. But Plan 17 is still in place, which probably means I can't go above this, and also means I have to launch a couple more attacks in the south, which is going to use up some of my, probably most of my offensive capabilities, but I can still advance. I got the Brits, whom I probably want to rail into position. How much choo-choo do I have? So this will not use British up. Yeah, they're only going to have six total rail usage. 17 is not quite as restrictive as I thought. It was on the first turn, but on the second turn, the 2 attacks can be any hexes south of hex row 25XX inclusive. That shouldn't be, I don't know, I mean, south of inclusive feels wrong to me. I know what they mean, so I'm fine, but that does open up more attacks. I don't have to do them south of Metz, which, given that the Germans fell back, is kind of hard to do, actually. And a quick glance at the West Front. I haven't decided where the attacks are going to be. I think there's going to be one all the way down here, and who knows what else I can manage. The French, I mean, they're just so outclassed by the German units. Of course, the BEF is pretty good too. but that can't count as my attacks. However, I've got sort of a combined English-Belgian attack to maybe try to take Antwerp back. We'll see. With additional forces coming up, this was sea lifted in. We'll go back over there and handle the rest of the turn in the east before we get back to the west. What happened in the east? Well, in the Balkans, nothing interesting, right? Over here, this fort at Lemberg, I hit it with, well, actually, I destroyed the units here, and I hit the fort at Lemberg with the remaining units. I could have hit this, I think, at 2-1, but I had a 2-1 and a 3-1 on here. I got an ND on one of the results, which does not allow me to advance. So the fort is still there, but it's clear, and if the Austrians don't throw troops in to defend it, I can just overrun it, because it's not a troop in its own. Now, one of the things that happened came from a no retreat type result. The no retreat doesn't specify what type of RPs you get. In a particular case, one of the things that got destroyed through not being able to retreat was an artillery unit. I gave the Austrians an artillery RP. It's kind of the question of, is it just manpower you're recovering, or were you able to slip some guns out? I'm not sure, but guns don't have a lot of manpower with them, so it kind of feels like the artillery RP is the right thing to give back anyway in a lot of ways. I don't think it makes much difference either way. It's an optional rule and whatever. Over here, the Russians were unable to take this hex, but they were able to soften it up quite a bit. They took out one unit and they, you know, ugly stuff, right? Attacks aren't pretty in this game. The casualties are already accumulating. Oh, I forgot about these guys. Fuck. Let me think how many units I rail moved. Because I can boat move them, but I can also presumably rail them up. I did 1, 2, 3, 4 that came in here, 5. I only have 1 unit that I could rail. So these guys would have sailed 1, 2 to Marseille. 3, 4, this guy can move here. But 3, this guy picks up. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'll just move him there. Again, he had an extra movement point if he wanted it, but he probably couldn't have gotten into a fight. Okay, fair enough. I just want to bring my troops in that I'm allowed to have. Anyway, now we go to the Western Front for the actual fighting. Yucky yuck. The attacks on the West Front did not go all that well. Things started out okay with the Brits and the Belgians. I took all the losses on the Belgians, ended up wiping what was in Antwerp out, but I don't want to advance in there because that would break up my situation. But then down here, we got flung back, and we also got flung back trying to make an attack in the forest here. I tried to consider Metz. It just seemed like that would collapse my whole line. It's one of the big problems. The game seems to have, like, you can gain great ground on the enemy by them attacking you. Now, I'm not denying that counterattacks were of some importance and whatnot, and that's probably what's being reflected here. But, man, oh man, the idea of, like, these guys being trapped out here in the middle of nowhere because there was an attack on their flank that collapsed, and they don't have a chance to withdraw at all, and stuff like that. It's really feeling weird, and I'm not sure what the effect of trenches is going to be. So you always have the option to not attack with all your units, but then you get a shittier odds table, right? It's also, you know, that becomes another factor in this whole, like, complicated calculation of how you're going to get your odds together for an attack. Some of this, it may actually work, sort of, kind of. if you play by a certain way, but it's very, very easy to play completely wrong and like launch everybody out of the trenches if that is indeed not supposed to be how you're supposed to, if that's supposed to not be how you're supposed to play, because you want to get better odds, you want a chance at winning the fight or whatever, and then you just lose ground by actually launching attacks and you get flung back much, much worse. We're seeing, I don't know. I don't know what we're seeing. We're seeing something that does not look like World War I here by me playing kind of naively. But withholding units isn't all that valuable right now because my units don't have a lot of staying power. So if, 2 out of 3 corps and the artillery retreat out of a hex, and I'm left with like 1 weak corps that I decided not to throw in or whatever, yeah, that's going to be a hell of a target and might even be able to be automatic victoried and then push forward anyway. So like the costs of losing an assault, of your assault failing, seem ahistorically large. And it's hard to believe that that is the intention of this game, that you're going to have these big gaps showing up in the course of your attacks. Now, once the trenches come in, is that going to change things all that much? Well, the trenches don't give you a retreat. They don't alleviate retreats the way the forts do. So they don't really give you a hell of a lot of an advantage either, in terms of, oh yeah, I can just, I can attack, but then I'd still have some kind of defense, some kind of significant defense in place. I'm just not sure. This is very unconvincing so far. It also seems highly random. I always have to have this page open because they don't give me that anywhere on the play aids. And we gotta check, we gotta do repairs for demoralizations and whatnot. Move our turn down to the September turn. Put some dice near there so I remember. And we're gonna load it up here. That is the August 1914 turn. Incredibly volatile, unbelievably so. Attack seems very, very effective. I don't mind attack being kind of effective, but things like this and down here, they're just feeling too powerful. Whereas here, the attack isn't very effective at all because the defenses are so strong that the Russians can't gain a lot of ground on me. I'm kind of worried that these guys are going to get surrounded and whatnot anyway. But the situation is certainly much worse than it was historically on the East Prussia side of things. Overall, I feel like the Entente is doing way, way better than they did historically on the West Front, definitely. The Germans have really been stymied because of their failed attack. Just, and that was kind of a luck factor. They got kind of the worst result, which was the attacker disordered, which flings everything that was involved back. This looks pretty good. I don't know how to compare it. And I also don't know how to compare the gaps that I've left there. And this looks pretty good so far, but I fear that the Russians are going to pay a price. Not as much as they did historically over there. Obviously, over in Serbia, the Austrians kicked butt. And if they can, gain enough in that front, they can start siphoning troops off of it to reinforce a little later than they did historically, but at least gain their advantage. The Belgian army is destroyed, but Belgium hasn't surrendered yet, which I think means it will be able to generate replacement points and put new units back in. One interesting thing, Belgium historically kept fighting and had troops throughout the war, even though they basically didn't exist anymore, and would probably count as surrendered as a country. Ypres, I believe, had fallen, but this is like back to the Hindenburg Line or something like that. Anyway, we're going to load this up, give you guys a look at how the system is working in more detail than probably will later. But I'm really disturbed with what I'm seeing so far, and I don't see that the trenches are going to give it that much of a static flavor. But that may be more, that may be more my play style is the problem than anything else. So if you go all out on an attack and high risk ventures, I don't know that you're going to get ahistorical positive results, but the negative results appear very ahistorical. And that is disturbing. Now, what did that kind of all-out attack happen? That's the argument you could try to make, is that like the attacks that I'm making are just outside the realm because I'm making, but I can't, first of all, I'm forced to from Plan 17 with the French, but also it's like, yeah, I got a fair chance, there's like a 20% chance I get the really bad result. Yeah, that's what it works out to be. If I'm looking at like the 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, actually the 2-to-1 can't get it without a minus. The 1-to-1, there's only a 20% chance of getting the really bad result. So